Okay, we left off in the Gemara on Samach Beis. Third line in the Gemara. Boimine Ravasi mi Rabbi Yochanan. Ravasi posed the question to Rabbi Yochanan. We already established you cannot tithe something which is growing to affect something which has been cut, harvested. And you cannot tithe from something that's been harvested for something that's still growing or attached to the ground, that hasn't been cut from the ground. So the Ravasi poses a question to Rabbi Yochanan, Oma peres arugazu tlushim, the fruits of this row, which have already been detached, tlushim, you truma al peres arugazu mechubarim, should be truma for the fruits that are still attached, or peres arugazu mechubarim, the fruits of this row, which are attached, you truma al peres arugazu tlushim, wait, l'chsheyitlishu, when they will be detached. So at the time that he's affecting it, when he's making a statement, the effect cannot take place then. Because either what you want to affect is what is attached, or what you want to bring about is attached. One or the other. But he wants it to take effect. He's saying when they will be detached. V'nitlishin, ultimately they were detached. Mao. If a man says to a woman, what's the halacha? But when is it effective? The act is now. But why? Because right now, she is marriageable. Right? She has the capacity to be affected through marriage. I want to delay the effect of that act. But she's marriageable now. But here, the produce is attached to the ground now. Right now, this produce cannot be tithed. Because there's a prerequisite, it has to be detached. But I'm saying now, I want to affect this, which is attached now, in the future when it will be detached. But it hasn't yet been detached. This will be similar, like you say, a woman's married, and you say, I am marrying you now from when you will be divorced. The Mishnah says explicitly, Ein Mukadeshes. Because right now she's not in a state that she's marriageable. She cannot be married. So that's what we call Davar Shlo B'Olam. It's something which is not within your grasp for you to affect it. Therefore, your action now, even though subsequently she's going to be divorced, it's irrelevant. The man is about to divorce her husband in 5 minutes. And everything's set in place. Doesn't make a difference. Because since that's not within your control, she's not marriageable, the action means nothing. It's not considered an act of marriage. Okay? So now, we have to discuss anyway. There's an argument everybody agrees, I want to transfer to you something which hasn't yet come into existence. I say, the field that I will buy tomorrow, I'm selling to you today. Right? I'm negotiating a field to buy a field tomorrow. That field that I will buy tomorrow, two people are pursuing a piece of property, and one person, he's going to be the one who's able to buy it. And the one, he hasn't bought it yet, he says, but the other one says, I'm even willing to pay you a profit for it. So it's going to be a flip. He's going to flip the property. So the person says, tomorrow, the lawyer said, now, let's say, write up the contract now, we'll do that today. So he says, okay, the field that I will buy tomorrow, I'm transferring now to be yours tomorrow. But he hasn't yet bought the property. Is it a valid sale? It's nothing. Because it's not yours. I mean, you can't sell something that's not yours. That's Davar Shlo B'Olam. Something that has no relevance to it at this moment. Right? Now, there's an argument. Man the Chachamim, what about you have yields of an orchard or a vineyard? So that comes naturally. That's called Avidi Da'asi. Every year, the orchard or the vineyard has a yield of produce. I say, next year's yield, I'm selling to you today. Rameir says it's a valid transfer. Of course, it has to come into existence. Nothing's affected until the fruits come into existence. But once the fruits grow, the yield belongs to the person who we had sold the yield to. 2016's yield, I'm selling to you. So we expect it to be. Next 20, as long as the tree has a certain lifespan, right? If it's within the lifespan of the tree, Rameir says it's a valid transfer when the fruit comes into existence. Because that's called Avidi De'osi. It's meant to come about. But something which is not meant to come about, everybody agrees it's nothing. Now, why do we have a principle? Why? Why could a person not transfer something which hasn't yet come into in existence? The Chacham say even if it's Avid Osi, even if it's meant to come about, it's a year in, a year out, it's a perennial, the tree produces the yield every year in, year out. Chacham say it's not valid. Rameir says it is valid. What's the understanding? Now, everybody agrees, if I want to transfer something that's not mine, you can't transfer something. Why? Because I can't transfer something which is not mine. Something's yours. You have ownership rights. I have a right to transfer that. Something that's not yet mine, you can't transfer something that's not yours. That's ein odam makna davar she'eino shelo. Something that hasn't yet come into existence. Is it yours? It's not yours. What would be a person goes in, you have a fruit tree, and the winter, before it even starts budding, he cuts your tree down. You've stolen my fruit. When am I stolen your fruit? The fruit hasn't yet grown. You destroyed my fruit. Now, I destroyed a fruit tree that has a potential to grow fruit. The fruit that's meant to come doesn't exist. So I'm a thief or a damager on the tree, not on the fruit. So I have to compensate whatever the value of the tree is. Not the fruit. The fruit hasn't grown yet. Even though it's meant to be. Good, but that's because that's the market value of the tree, because that has a potential. But it's not the full value of the fruit, as if the fruit already was on the tree. So it's a different value. Okay? So therefore, why? Because the fruit doesn't exist. So how could I transfer something which doesn't exist yet to a third party? If we have a principle, you can't sell something, you can't transfer something that you don't own yet. That's one position why ain't odam makna davar shelo b'olam. That's the Chachamim. Therefore, whether it's Avida Dosi, not Avidi, it's meant to come, it's not meant to come. It's irrelevant. You can't sell something that doesn't exist. Because if you don't own it, you can't sell something that you don't own. Okay? Wait one second. Let's first talk about the concepts. Why you cannot transfer something that doesn't exist, even if it's meant to come into being. The Chachamim. Now, we know that every transaction, to be considered a valid transaction, you need what we call gemiras das. You need intent, right? If intent is lacking, it's not a valid transfer, even though you go through the motions of transfer. To sell something that doesn't exist, to say the person is sincere, sufficiently sincere, in the transaction, it's questionable. It's questionable. So if there's not a sufficient degree of intent during the transfer has no value. Something that you have no control over, because it doesn't exist, to say the person is sincere in that, it's questionable. It's like the Gemara says, asmachto lo kanyo. It's Gemara in also Gemara Bava Metzia. What's asmachto? A person is a sharecropper. So, and he gives, let's say, he takes a third, two-thirds of the yield goes to the owner. And the owner says, and what happens if you don't work my field? I need a guarantee. I'm going to be left with nothing. Sure, if there's a yield, if you work the field, I'll have two-thirds. But if you choose to go on vacation, or you get sick, what's going to be? I'll be left with nothing. You have to give me a guarantee. He says, if I don't work the field, I will pay 6 times the value of the yield. That's what he says. And they go and they do a kinyan that binds him, whatever, in every sense of the word. Gemara says it's meaningless. Right? Why is it meaningless? Because the person, when he said that, he didn't plan not to work the field. It's only to put the other person's mind at ease. He says, you know something? I'll pay you 6 times. Why? Because the person really believes he'll never ever have to pay the 6 times the value of the yield. That's called asmachta. In the event, if, that event's never going to have. So I'll tell you, something? I'll give you $1 million if I don't work the field. Because it's not reality. Because the person never believed he's not going to work the field. But you said it, and we went through the motions of to bind you, again, but without gemiras das, without intent, it's meaningless. So to say, I will sell you, I promise you, you can say whatever you want. If something doesn't exist in reality, in existence, it's lacking in sufficient intent. Therefore, it's not a valid transfer. So good. So let's say we'll talk intent. That is the issue of davar shelo b'olam. And you're dealing with Avida Dosi. So that's the argument. Reb Meir and the Chachomim, If something is meant to come about, although it hasn't yet come into existence, so the seller is not talking about a pie in the sky over here. This is reality. It will be. That's sufficient. That's sufficient intent. Therefore, a mayor says, if I sell you the yield, next year's yield, since it's a perennial, it will happen naturally, it's a valid transfer. Chum say it doesn't make a difference. A person, unless from the buyer side and the seller side, until something exists, is not sufficient intent. Therefore, the transfer is not a valid transfer. That's sufficient intent. But you have to have intent on both sides. The seller and the buyer. And here, because wait, well, let's talk about if you say the deficiency of Shalom is intent. That makes it easier to understand the argument. So since it's meant to come about, is that sufficient or not sufficient? Rameir says that's sufficient. Chum says it's not sufficient. No, there are two ways to understand it. No, wait. No. That's something. You know, the most devout Levatola has nothing to do with this. No.
Giving them seed is they are sharecroppers. But there's a deal, there's an actual transaction that takes place. But the thing is not here yet. How's it structured?
It's very simple. I own the field. Truthfully, I could take it all because I own the field. The government owned all the fields. He says, I will be kind. I will give you the seed. You just have to pay 20% to the government. You can take 4/5 for yourself. That's what he said to them. 1/5 to the government, you take. Let's say Yosef wanted to renege on the deal. Could have reneged before. The Gemara says in Asochas HaPoalim, let's say you hire an employee. He says, I will pay you $28 an hour. And before the employee starts working the field, the owner says, I've changed my mind. He's not bound to what he originally said. But the moment he starts working the field, he's bound to whatever he said. Because now he's working as an employee. Until then, it's just words. The words haven't yet bound him financially. The moment you start working, the contract has started. Because you've actually actualized what the intent. There, the intent was actualized. So now I have to, every hour, no, nobody argues there. That nobody argues. Let me, another question. This is a little interesting. A field is a wheat field. So the owner of the field doesn't necessarily plant the field. He hires a person. He brings his own seed, plants the field, wheat. Let's say a person, he wanted to preempt somebody else. He went, unbeknown to the owner, he plowed the field, he planted field wheat. Does the owner have to pay the person who planted the field without permission the going rate what normally one would pay for a worker who would plant a wheat field? He has to pay. Going rate. If it's soda suyalita, if the field was meant to be planted wheat, although he did it without the knowledge or the permission of the owner, he has to pay him the going rate that you would pay a person who would normally plant a wheat field. Why? What's the reason? So the Rishonim explain, because we could say with certainty it's something he would have wanted. Maybe the person acted too aggressively, but factually, after everything's said and done, this is something he would have paid for this value. And since we say he would have paid for this, you have to pay. What about if he would have planted a wheat field rather than wheat with barley, which normally he's not interested in barley, right? So the barley, I only have to pay you for your labor and for the cost of the seed. So let's say he plants the wheat field and with barley, and no barley grows. Doesn't grow, right? He pays him nothing. Let's say the yield is a very poor yield, and it barely covers the cost of the barley. I have to pay you for the cost of the seed. That's it. I don't pay you more than that. What about if it's a field which is meant to be planted with wheat, he plants it without permission, and there's a poor yield? There I have to pay you the full value of what you normally pay, even though the cost will be more than the yield. He has to pay. Why? Because we could say with certainty in advance, he planted it responsibly. So if you would have hired a regular person to plant the wheat, you would have paid him his full regardless of what the yield's going to be. It's the same thing, because we say with certainty it's something he wanted, and he will be agreeable to it. Therefore, he's bound to pay whatever the wage is to plant the wheat field, because it was meant to be planted wheat. Did he give you a spit shine or not? No. No. Because you were not interested in it. I'm not interested in you cleaning my window. My windshield wipers with the solution would do just as good. I don't need it. That's not a benefit. Right. It's not the same. You didn't buy the field yet? I'm selling the yield. Next year's yield of the trees. It's understood it's nothing. No, but everybody agrees. No, it's only effective when the fruit's there. You can't own something that doesn't exist. There's an act of transfer to affect something when it comes to in existence. Not it's something else. There it's a wage. Something else. There I'm bound to a wage. Right? It's a wage. Something else. The man did the work. Do I owe you? That's an employee. Right?
So if the yield is not produced, does not come about, then the person who's not to pay, he pays ahead of time.
No, we're not even talking about the money. We're not talking about the payment. We're talking about you do an act of transfer before something exists, then it comes to existence. The original act, does it affect something that doesn't exist when it comes to existence? So when the fruit, let's say the seller would want to change his mind before the fruit comes to existence, could he change his mind? See, this would be similar to what we said earlier. A person sells, is Makadish a woman, somebody comes in the interim, right? So if you sell it to a third party, so therefore that's the question. But you can't, because there the kiddushin took effect. You married the woman before the 30 days. Here, the moment the fruit comes to existence, immediately it becomes the first person who you transferred it to, according to a mayor. You can't do anything to stop it. You can't sell it to a third party. It's not similar. Maybe you could, but it's not similar to kiddushin. The kiddushin, the woman is marriageable now because the marriage only takes place in 30 days. So let's say she would accept marriage from a third party before the 30 days come. She's already a married woman. So when 30 days comes, it can't take effect because she's married.
Right, but let's say I want to marry you in 30 days. Here's a marry you in 30 days.
No, the marriage should be effective in 30 days.
Right. She's not married for 30 days.
So therefore, if she accepts marriage from, she's married to the second person. But that's not this case, because here there's no woman. The woman doesn't exist. The fruit doesn't exist.
Right, so then I would think for sure you could sell to the second party.
No. It's not simple, because the moment you transferred it, it's already in motion. So what are you selling? The moment it comes in, the moment it comes into existence, that first person already acquired it. You understand?
Yes.
Here, you're preempting is because the marriage takes effect before the second marriage, before the first marriage. Here, the transfer, the moment the fruit comes into being, who does it belong to? The first person. So therefore, I can't sell to a second person. Here, when she accepts marriage from a second party, she's not yet married. And she's marriageable right now. So she's married to the second person, not to the first person. There's all background information, just to understand the Gemara.
The only case where we said it would belong to combination
Okay, I'm not discussing the Mishnah now. Otherwise it gets complicated. We didn't get the answer. We didn't get the answer yet. No. He says, Mao. We're still in the question. No. We didn't give the answer yet. We didn't do the answer. Okay, David read ahead. Okay, Omar Lei. So Rabbi Yochanan answered, Ravasi, Kol shebiyodu lavkem chusamaisidami. Anything is within your ability. We don't look at it as if the act was not yet done. What's the issue now? It's attached. Something that's attached cannot be affected. At this moment, does he have the ability to detach it? He could detach it. So because he can detach it, therefore the act that he does now is an effective act. A woman who's married, I will marry you after you get divorced. At this moment, does he have any control over her married state? Her husband has to divorce her first. The man who wants to marry her cannot determine whether she's going to be marriageable or not. So that's not within his ability. So it's something which is beyond, has no relevance to him. She's a woman, is not marriageable. But over here, I could affect what's growing by detaching it at this moment. Therefore, my act of tithing is considered a valid act.
That's a big leap from Remeir's statement where something naturally occurs. Now I actually have to go and...
No, this is better. This is much better than Remeir.
No, this is much, it's a big hit.
Now, but I'll tell you what the difficulty is. Rashi says something here. A person says, I'm tithing the produce on that row, which is growing now, with the produce that's already been picked. So to tell me that it will be effective when it's detached, fine. Right? It's not considered like Dov Shel B'Olam. Would it be retroactive? I'd say, how could it be retroactive? If it's retroactive, but retroactive, it's still growing. Rashi says that it's effective l'mafreya. Let's take a look in Rashi. Ma'u shetei truma l'mafreya. That at the time that he said it should be truma, it's effective retroactively. Mihabi kemaj Dov Shel B'Olam. Is it considered like you consecrated something which doesn't yet exist or not? What does that mean? It's impossible that it's lamafrei means retroactive. Doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean that. Even though lamafrei means retroactive. So what does it mean? What was our question? The act of tithing, is it an act of tithing or not an act of tithing? So we said you can't tithe something which is attached or for something that's detached, or something's detached, something that's attached. So our question was, is it an act of tithing? If you marry a woman who's married after she's divorced, is that considered an act of marriage? It's not an act of marriage. It's meaningless. Here, once the fruit is picked, then the act is an act of marriage. But to be effective, of course it's only effective once it's picked. You understand what I'm saying? Here we're saying, when I tithe something, which is, I'm taking something that's detached to affect something that's attached. For when it will be detached. Is that an act of tithing? But when will it be effective? Only once the other thing is detached. If it's considered not, so the act is not even considered an act of tithing. It's meaningless. So when we say lemafreya, not that the effect is lemafreya. The act is, it's revealed the act was an act of tithing. But it's not even an act of tithing. But if it's picked, it's an act of tithing to affect what was picked later. But of course the effect is a later effect. So the mafrei is going on the act, not the effect of the act. Right? It's impossible to understand it any other way.
Could this be done? Fruit on the tree that not yet been picked is still comes up. So it doesn't have the potential.
No. The Gemara is going to discuss that on the second side of it. Once it grows a third, then it's considered, it's in a position to be picked. The Gemara is going to have a question on the second side of the page. What about it budded? It's at the budding stage. So, no, it just starts flowering. At that point, nothing, no fruit, just flowering. That the Gemara gets on the side according to Reb Meir. According to a mayor, that gets involved, whether it's Dov Shelo B'Olam or not, it's something else. But here we're thinking about it's at the minimal level that it's classified as a fruit or as wheat, as a grain. So since right now it could be cut. And if we cut right now, it's an effective act of tithing.
So why is it that something is unripe, if it's inedible, and I cut it right now?
It's literally inedible.
Those figs that we say the figs are very, we let go.
No, no. That's called edible. If it doesn't become a fruit on the rooftop when you let it, ripen. It's a fruit, but it's a fruit when you picked it.
Even though it's inedible.
Doesn't make a difference because if it has a potential to become edible after it's picked, that means it was a fruit when you picked it. It didn't become a fruit on the rooftop. Then you say Bor Pri HaRoof, not Bor Pri Eitz, right? Or Pri HaShemesh. It's the fruit of the sun. It's not, it's like sun-made raisins. It's sun-made, That's the way they advertise it.
What's the advantage of doing this, saying that now I'm going to make truma, separate truma once it's picked, and once it's picked, then it's truma. But before that, what happens?
Very simple. A man's going out of town. He does the act of tithing now. Now he has his foreman go harvest the field. He has his workers harvest it. So he doesn't have to pick it. The moment it's picked, the act that I did previously, what they will do later.
So that he's saying that it's going to be tied.
That he already did the act of tithing. To be effective whenever they pick it. Right? Like a man marries a woman after 30 days. It should be. I'm doing it now. Be effective for 30 days. Now he goes away for 6 months. 30 days comes. He's not around. She's married. Same thing. He's not distributing the tithe there. He has not. This is the act of tithing. He's separating it out. Is it considered an act of tithing? We're not speaking of distribution of tithes. Distribution is something else. You want to give it to the Levi and to say, to be seen what will be. So the Levi holds it. So he has tevel, and once it's picked, now he could take whatever was taken. The Kohen now he has truma. Okay. So he says, Kol shebyor lav kemuchas ha'maisadami. Anything that you have within your ability, it's not considered as if the act is lacking. Now, it's interesting. There's a discussion in Yevomis. Now, an eid echad is believed, right? A single witness is believed. If a person comes and says, is this meat kosher? And there's a person who observes kashrus. And he says it's kosher, even though he's a single witness, you believe the witness. That's called eid echad nem b'yisurin. A single witness is believed, even a woman, doesn't have to be a man, which normally only a man qualifies for certain testimony, even a woman, eid echad nem b'yisurin. Samara has a question. Let's say a person has tevel. And the person himself, and everybody knows it was tevel until recently, it's fully processed grain, and somebody asked the person, was it tithed? The one who owns the grain, is he believed? Samar says he's believed. Why? But it's chasik yisura, meaning the grain itself has a presumed status that's tevel, and it's still tevel. So how do you believe him? How do you believe in eid echad when it's going against a chazaka? Mar says, why not? Because he has the ability to tithe it at this moment. Since it's biyodo, he could change that status at this moment. Therefore, he's believed. Therefore, the previous status has no relevance to this person because he can make the difference. Okay? That's understood. But Mar has a question, what about a third party? The only person who could tithe grain, you have to own the grain. You have to own the produce. If you don't own the produce, you can't tithe it. You ask a third party, the grain that was tevel yesterday, did the owner tithe it? That's the question he asked the individual. So Mar says it's not so simple. Maybe eid echad is only believed when it's not his chasik yisura. It's not his chasik yisura. Let's say you have a fish, and it's been filleted. Yes, but is it a kosher fish or is it not a kosher fish? The eid echad says it is a kosher fish. Over there, he's not saying anything which is contrary to a chazaka, correct? Because it could be kosher, it could be not kosher. It was not in a non-kosher status, and the question is, did the transition take place? Okay? So therefore, he's believed. No, piece of meat is something else. Piece of meat, Gemara says why piece of meat. Because a piece of meat, let's say I take somebody else's animal. Without permission, I slaughter his animal. Is it a valid shechita? It's a valid shechita. I did the wrong thing. I may be a damager, but the meat is kosher meat. So regarding kosher meat, every person has within his ability, it's biyado to do shechita. That's what you believed. I'm explaining to you, any meat, any cow or species that the meat comes from, since every Jew has the ability to bring about that same result, therefore he's believed even though it's contrary to the chazokah, because before it's slaughtered, you weren't permitted to eat it. Right? But let's say the tithing grain. Until it's tithed, it's tevel. So, and the only one who could make be effective to change its status is only the owner. So is a third party believed? And the Gemara leaves it unresolved.
Is there a presumption that you don't leave tevel around?
That's only a chover. Chover, but if you're not a chover, it's a question. And the Gemara leaves it unresolved. Is an Eirechad believed where it says Chazik Yisura? Or leaves it unresolved. But for the owner, it's never a question. Because Kol Shebiyado. But it's a different concept. There Biyado means because he has the ability to change his status, therefore he's believed. Here it's the question is, presently it's attached. You can't tithe something that's attached. So therefore the act itself should be considered a meaningless action. Since I could make the difference by detaching it in the physical sense, therefore it's effective. Therefore it's considered an effective act. To be effective when it will be detached. Logic. Lumley cross svaru.
Right next to it, so close to it.
No.
Able to affect the
Let's say the guy's in another world. It doesn't make a difference. Since theoretically, if he would be here, he can make the difference. Therefore, it's considered an effective act. Okay. He has something growing in the Himalayas, right? And he's on Park Avenue in his penthouse apartment. Okay. He says, "I'm tithing this for that in the Himalayas." He's not near the web. And when that whatever they call them up there, these people who climb. Yeah, when that person picks it, it should be effective. It's effective. But you're not there. That's called biyodo. Because if theoretically you would be there, you'd be able to make the difference, therefore it's considered an effective act.
Really? So there's no limit. According to Rabbi Yochanan, there's no
No,
limit.
it's kol shebiyodo. That's what it means. We'll see. The Gemara's going to ask questions to see the differences. Eisvei. Homa li sharei mukdeshes li la'acha she'ez gayer. Person says you should. Person's a non-Jew. And he says, I'm doing an act of marriage now. It should be effective after I convert. But he's still a non-Jew. Lach tizgairi. She's not Jewish. He gives her the money, the ring, when she's not Jewish. It should be effective after you convert. No. You'll see the Gemara. Lach ishtachrer. After I am emancipated. Lach ishtachri. So this is simple. Lach shiom is balech. You should be married after your husband dies. So there it's not biyodo. He doesn't have the ability to kill her husband. Okay? Lach shetomus achosech. After your sister dies. Lach sheyachlots lechivomich en mukadeshes. Okay? So that's all, because it's not within his ability to marry her. So Moses is like, Bishlam of Kulu, the majority of those cases, love biyodo. It's not within his ability to bring about the effect. Elegeri biyodo. He says, after I convert, I will, what? The marriage should be effective. What is power? Wait. He already arranged the bezdin. He already arranged it. He has the 3 rabbis there, the 3 Jews, who are going to convert him. They've interrogated him. The Gemara's going to answer that, because they could back out the last moment. But the Gemara right now, I understand, but the Gemara right now, everything is ready to go. So the Gemara said, but there could be a hitch at the last moment. For whatever reason, they could say, we're not interested. So he's not in full control of what's taking place. No, the slave, we're talking about a convert. Oh, yeah, sure. Evet Kanani, not a Jewish slave. No, a Jewish slave, you can marry a Jewish woman. He's Jewish. This is Evet Kanani. Evet Kanani. Of course,
So the Jews then will be released anyway.
not released. Not released. There's marriage. A Jewish slave is a full Jew.
I'm saying, but they get, it's not a,
You understand?
no, I can't, but a Jewish slave, a woman will be released after, will be free from her slavery. And she's, after 6 years, I think.
Correct. Correct. To be continued.